Hi everyone and welcome to Rainbow Racing, the iRacing Rainbow Racing League Formula 1600 Season 1 Round 5 at Rudskogen Motorsenter. It's a tongue twister, but here we are in Norway for Round 5. We're currently following Haley um, on the stream, who is one of the biggest challenges to our runaway championship leader, George. Um, Thanks, George. No worries at all. Happy to broadcast. It is, what time is it now? 5:28 in the morning here in Australia, but always happy to get up on a Monday to stream this championship. I've got coffee in hand and I'm ready for another good race. Um, so everybody watching, we've got a minute 40 to go. And surprisingly, George is not in the lead for the first session, I can think, in the whole championship. George Williams there sitting in P2 has topped every session, practice, qualifying, and race since the start of the season, all four rounds. And at the moment, Hernandez, who missed the last round, has come back with with the goods. Um, so fast, yes. But you're not too far off, only a couple of tenths off. So at the moment, um, the fastest time in the session, 1 minute 28.162 from Palermo and 128.4 from George. And Haley's sitting there on a 129.6, but I think that time's probably going to improve as we get into qualifying because Haley's always been very close to George when it comes to one lap pace. So we might just wait to see. The clock's ticking down. Last 30 seconds. Have we got anybody else on the track? We've got our practice leader here on track in that now distinctive yellow livery. So this is going to be a very interesting race. It's a very hard track. Thanks for that, George. Thanks for doing the testing. So should be able to make it with no fuel here today, or no fuel stop. For those that have been watching the season so far, um, a number of races have required fuel. So thankfully today there won't be a mandatory pit stop, but this track is quite complex and it is very easy to lose the car on a number of these twisting turns. So it'll be very interesting to see whether or not people can keep it off the wall um, and out of trouble. But we might see people coming to the pits for repairs, but that's about all. So we're just waiting for people to come out for qualifying. Like as usual in this championship, we have a 15-minute qualifying session followed by the race. Um, and what I might try to do for you is get the track map up. So here we go. So here's the track map. So we just started qualifying. Um, Rudskogen in Norway. It's Norway's oldest motorsport track. So it's been open since the 90s, 1990 to be exact. And we're actually probably very close to celebrating its anniversary. So 20th of May 1990 was when it opened. So um, nearly as old as I am. I was 1990 baby, and so the track will be turning 34 this year, and is the official motorsport track of Norway as well. So um, yeah, it's a track that has ebbed and flowed with popularity over the last few years. In iRacing, when it originally came on board, it was a paid track, and I feel like a lot of people didn't actually participate on the track when it was paid. Um, and I was one of the people that bought it because I thought it would look like a really really fun track. But then it later on became free, and I think that's when it's sort of got its, got a bit of resurgence, and people have really really got into the track. Um, but anyway, we're here in qualifying. We're following practice leader um, Palermo, and we'll see whether or not they can actually pull it out here and get pole, be the first pole position other than George here this season. Um, and we've got 5 cars on the track today, so maybe we'll just go through the cars while people get settled for their first lap. And then we might jump on board with somebody just to get a bit of a feel of this track. Really, there's not a lot of places you can sit and relax. The front straight is actually quite short. Um, we'll pick up George here. So George is our championship leader, as I mentioned, in that pink livery. Uh, he hasn't had it easy. The last couple of race wins he has had to fight for. It hasn't just been a walk in the park from pole. Uh, Last round, actually, there was a near stall on the grid for George, and he had to fight back to first. And it was actually quite a good race to watch between him and Selena, who's here for their second round of the series. So if we maybe just pick up Selena now as well, well, they might still be in the pits. I think they're in the pits. Let's pick up Jessica. So Jess is the CEO of Rainbow Racing and had an improvement in the last round at Tsukuba. They got quite close to the front runners and had a relatively good race until halfway through the race. So steadily improving as time goes on for Jess, and I have high hopes that they'll be challenging at least for the back end of the podium today. And we'll pick up Haley, who's just set a time, but has gone into the pits, so I've just missed her. But Haley is our main challenger, or has been our main challenger as the season has progressed. So Haley has been the one that has been able to keep George honest in qualifying. Unfortunately, in races, they've had a few first lap incidents. But if Haley can erase those first lap incidents, I think they're definitely somebody who can challenge for a race win here today. Um, but at the moment, the first laps that have been set here in qualifying, 128.6 from Hernandez, 128.8 from George, and a 129.9 from Haley. So very, very similar to the practice times. And we'll be interested to see here um, whether or not George can close that gap, or whether or not we'll have a new pole position winner. So coming across the line now for another lap, and looks like that lap wasn't counted. Looks like there might have been a cut track on that lap. So um, we'll pick up George here, and what we'll do is we'll go for a ride in the cockpit for a lap with George, just to give you a bit of an idea um, of the track here. So as you can see, this first left and right hander in these cars without the aerodynamics is quite sketchy. And you'll see as the track goes on, there's quite a lot of camber and elevation to a lot of these corners. And so here, you dip into the corner, and then as you come out of this double right-hander, the track rises. And so these sort of elevation changes for cars without aerodynamics is a big challenge for these guys today. So hopefully we won't see many spins in the races, but if we do, it's part and parcel of racing these cars on this track. It's not an easy one. It's probably the hardest track we've been to this season. So here we're coming around to the last section. I would say this last little section is easy to get wrong, um, mainly because coming into this last right-hand sweeper is very, very easy to go wide if you get the speed wrong. But George is just coming across the line here, and we'll see what sort of lap time they've set. So 128.1. and that would have been pole, but Hernandez, while we were on board with George, has just set a 1:28.0. So that's the fastest lap today. Um, Here, faster than any practice times as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not they'll get into the 27s. It's not something I would have considered after practice here, but um, very fast times out there on track today. And let's pick up Hernandez here. Currently the fastest car out on track, doing a fantastic job. Um, I'm not sure whether they would remember, but we actually found each other out on track together last week at Hockenheim in the rain, which was a very, very good race out there. Um, but yeah, it's always nice. It's the first time I've seen somebody from the league actually out on track. So that was nice to see. Nice to see a familiar face on the track. Um, but here we are rounding the last corner. We'll see whether they can improve into a 27, crossing the finish line. And 1 minute, no, it looks like there was a cut track there. Um, so Haley's sitting in the pits at the moment, but coming out for some laps. So I'll be very interested to see whether or not they can get themselves down into the 28s. And we'll see. We'll just pick up Jess here. So Jess hasn't set a time yet, um, and we might see whether we can stick with them for the next lap to see. Um, oh, and a spin, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Very, very easy to do um, in these cars because of the elevation changes on this track. Um, it's quite easy to have a spin. I think we'll probably, unfortunately, see a bit of that today. But hopefully for the race leaders, it'll be a relatively clean race because it looks like we're going to have a race for the win here today, and George is not going to have it easy. But we just picked up Haley. I just want to maybe stay with them until we get to their lap and see how they do on their lap. 1 minute 29.9 at the moment, 1.9 off the um, qualifying leader Hernandez. Um, oh, and here's a spin. That's okay. It's a warm-up lap here for Haley, so they can get back going um, and still do the lap, hopefully. Up, and they've decided to abort the lap. And let's pick up Hernandez as they come out of the pit. So they've decided they're. Oh, everybody keeps going back to the pits on me. All right, let's go to George, old faithful. Um, George is known for putting the laps in. And last lap, he's set a 1 minute 28.1. So he's continually improving. And this is probably the closest that we've had a qualifying um, so far. So 1 minute 28.099 plays a 1 minute 28.104. Yeah, that's totally fair. I think if you know you've got good pace in the race, then considering the size of the field, it's good just to focus on race pace. Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. I have been known for forgetting to put my race setup on when I go out for a qualifying lap in officials. I actually did it in a GTE race at Road Atlanta a few weeks ago when the GTEs were at Road Atlanta, and it ended up being one of my most fun races. Actually, I started in I think I started in P6, and I had to pit as the safety car was coming in because I would have ran out of fuel at the end of the next lap. And then I spent the race racing back up to my starting position, which was pretty fun. So a lot of passing and a lot of luck from people crashing out, but definitely not the position I wanted to be in. Yeah, I've been there before. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good fun race because Road Atlanta is actually a really, really fun race to make some passes on. Um, oh, George nearly losing it there. Up and around. So as we mentioned on the onboard with George, that corner in these cars is quite a hard one to master. So George has gone back in. Let's pick up uh, our qualifying leader here, mate. You two are that this is the closest a qualifying session has been so far in the league. And look at like my overlays, the eye overlay isn't even registering that difference. 0.0 on the overlay, even though it's point 0.5, 0.005 between you two. You're pretty much setting the exact same lap time. That's actually phenomenal to see in a league race. So you two are almost identical on pace. Don't think I've raced these cars around this track either, so I'm not sure what sort of time I'd be setting. Um, but we'll see what he has here. Is we're going to have an improvement. Now that we're so close, I really want to see a 27, 29.2. Now, unfortunately, oh, that's a little bit of a spin. I was going to say, there we go. Um, I was going to say that Hernandez was slowly approaching um, Jess, who's just gone off here. Um, and so I was a bit worried that potentially they were going to get involved with each other and slow each other down on their fast laps. So we've got a minute to go, and it looks like everybody's in the pits. So is that it, everyone? So it looks like with a minute to go, there's definitely not enough time for people to get around the track to actually set another qualifying time. So it looks like that potentially is going to be it. Um, so very, very close qualifying. As I said, the closest qualifying um, we've had here. So in the Rainbow Racing League, um, literally 0.005 between the top people. Um, and I think I'd be safe to call it. Um, so we're counting down 8 seconds to go. Um, and it looks like we've got a new pole leader here. New driver gets pole position for the first time, round 5 here at Rudskogen Motorsenter, and a new pole position winner, Guillermo Hernandez. Fantastic lap there to steal pole position from George, who has been a runaway championship leader now for 4 rounds. So, practice qualifying the race. George has topped every single session here for the Rainbow Racing League Formula 1600 Championship. And today, that has been taken away from them. So um, now, as we gear up for the race, um, 20 laps here. And what I'm going to try to do, oh, that is a bit blurry, isn't it? Oh, that's what I get for trying new graphics. But he's qualifying anyway, and I'll see what I can do in future championships. For those that have been watching the championship for the last 5 weeks, I am brand new, fresh to commentating, and I continue to try new things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, there's qualifying. The top 5. Jess and Selena didn't get a lap in, but we'll see how they go for the race. Um, so a rolling start here, which we haven't had before. Um, every other round has been uh, off the grid, and George, they're saying that they might not have enough fuel to get to the end now. Um, yeah, so a bit of a change from all the first 4 rounds where we've had standing starts, which is the traditional starting procedure for the Formula 1600s. So but yeah, we're following the Porsche iRacing safety car here, going around to get the green flag. And I wonder whether that will pose a fuel problem for other people as well. So we'll have to wait and see later in the race whether or not potentially um, all the drivers might have to come in for a splash and dash before the end of the race. Um, we're expecting 5 cars here. Selena's there on the list, but they haven't gridded up. So we'll see whether or not they join the race as we commence, or maybe potentially they're going to start from the pits. But we've got 4 drivers on the grid here. Um, Selena, um, hopefully joining soon. But the one I'm interested to watch is Haley, who we're just locked onto now at the moment. Haley has been very close to George in previous rounds, and it'll be interesting to see on race pace with full fuel load whether or not they can challenge. But here we go, coming around the last corner onto the start finish straight. Hernandez pushes go, and here we are, green flag for round 5 of the iRacing Rainbow Racing League Formula 1600 season at Rudskogen Motorsenter. A good start by the two front row. And oh, Hernandez goes wide, giving the race lead straight to George as we exit turn 2. So George already swooping onto the race lead, not happy with losing that first place position for the first time all season, and has decided to reclaim it straight away as soon as we get into the race. And oh, just in the background there, Jessica going a bit wide, um, letting Haley back by. Um, So Haley had lost 3rd place there at the start, and Jessica had snuck through the first couple of corners, and um, but Haley's got back into 3rd place and struggling a little bit there on cold tyres, but hasn't lost the leaders too much, only 1.8 seconds behind the 2 leaders. Um, but we'll just pick up our pole position winner. Potentially a good strategy call, not to push too hard. They did go wide on the first corner, so good to gather it and not lose the car. But a familiar story after lap 1 here in the Rainbow Racing League, George Williams out in front. And now the question will be um, whether or not they can consolidate. And like mentioned in the chat here on Twitch, whether or not they will have to come in for a splash and dash before the end of the race. But we've got 19 laps to go. Um, it looks like we'll just pick up Jessica here in P4, coming out of turn 1. So we'll go through the races. Jessica here in P4, um, Haley in P3, which is almost they're almost coming accustomed. This P3, um, they've really put a stake on it throughout the season. They've finished P3s and P2s. That they've been a consistent podium finisher no matter who's in the field. Um, so thankfully this week as well, they've had a clean first lap as well, which has been their Achilles heel as the season has gone on. Good pace, but just some first lap incidents really preventing them from being involved with the lead battle. So what we might do now is just go back to the leaders. Point 4 between the 2 leaders at the moment. And so now I think this is going to get interesting. Um, George has given us some fantastic racing over the season. In the first round, there was a really good race between George and Amy, who isn't joining us for the rest of the season. In the last round out, there was a fantastic race between Selena and George as well. And there have been many other battles throughout the season that I won't go into, but needless to say, George has not had it easy, and he's put on a show for us time and time again. So um, be interested to see here whether or not they can actually hold off um, Hernandez for. Oh, what a save! That is a fantastic car control. I was, as you could tell, just holding my breath there, struggling to get words out. Um, so they've lost first position, but Can I just say that was a phenomenal save there by George to keep the car on the track. Um, so yeah, I honestly thought he was going to go around there, and that just shows fantastic car control there. So now Hernandez back out in front, where they started, the pole position winner. It'll be interesting to see whether or not George can hold on to the back um, of them and whether or not the battle can ensue. Uh, Only 0.005 between the two cars in qualifying, so they're equally matched. Um, and whether or not that translates into race pace is the question. But it looks like as the tyres have warmed up, uh, Hernandez definitely has a more stable car. So we'll just see here whether or not George can keep um, on them. And I don't think Selena has been able to join us, unfortunately, which is a shame. So we've just got the four cars here today. Um, but as has been proven time and time again in this championship, um, the small field does not negate good racing. We've consistently had extremely good battles throughout the field, especially for P1. And so the small field definitely does not detract from the product here at Rainbow Racing. And George going for a late move. Hernandez saw them. A little bit cheeky there, but pulled it off. Um, Very, very good racing. And thankfully, George delivering as soon as I said that. That was a very good late move under brakes. Really controlled. Didn't miss the apex. Hernandez saw them coming and was able to execute. But it looks like they're going to battle into the first corner. This is a very difficult corner to get a move done cleanly. Hernandez thinks different of it, which I think is wise because he'd be ending up on the outside of the corner here in turn two. Um, so now we'll see whether or not Hernandez can fight back. But this is, what is that, the third or fourth lead change here at the start of the race. Fantastic to see. So we might go on board here with Hernandez because I'm very interested to see how. Oh no! All right, not too bad. Still saved the car. Um, Lucky to be on board there to just to see the fantastic car control there from Hernandez. Very smart to just jump on the brakes, have a bit of counter steer there, and I assume a bit of a clutch there. In these cars, a bit of a technique when you have a spin or a near spin, and the clutch is actually very, very helpful in sort of locking the axle up and preventing the car from rolling. And so if you can sort of master the use of the clutch and the brake um, during a spin, it is very, very useful. Um, and so now 3.4 seconds between the two leaders. It'll be now a question of whether Hernandez can keep the car planted and can ease their way back up to George, our race leader. Um, but seeing the pace in practice and qualifying, I think they can do it. Well, fortunate for us here in the broadcast there to catch that near spin live on board. But unfortunate for Hernandez because I think uh, that was proving, or it was looking like they were going to potentially square up for a repass down at the hairpin where George got to them lap before. So at the moment, um, picking up P3 here, Haley. Still in 1 minute 29s, which is good consistent pace, but unfortunately, um, not really on the pace of the leaders at the moment. Oh, and a spin here, unfortunate. Um, but that's okay. Not too much time lost. But I think good consistent pace here from Haley. Banking another P3 um, is good for their championship at the moment, sitting P2 in the championship and and as time goes on, might be able to lock that down. But with Hernandez's pace here today, if they can finish in P2, they'll definitely be closing the gap for that battle for P2 in the championship. So um, definitely just having a good, consistent run in there in P3 for Haley will be good for their championship. So George has been able to pull out the lead again. 1 minute 28.172 for George on that lap and a 1 minute 28.206 for Hernandez. So George still a little bit faster on that previous lap. Um, Probably Hernandez just recovering from that spin and trying to have a clean lap. Um, but already on this lap, it looks like they are a little bit faster than our race leader. So I think as time goes on, we've got um, 14 laps to go, or 13 and a half laps to go, I should say, as we come around to the last few corners. Um, and it'll be, yeah, interesting to see whether or not George will have any other issues. At the moment, um, they had a little bobble while in the lead on lap two, which let Guillermo back through, um, but then made a phenomenal pass. I've got a little bit of flashing there for George, but they're back in the stream. Um, but yeah, fantastic move down at the hairpin there for the race win, and that potentially might prove to be um, the decisive move for the race here today. But again, George actually setting the fastest time of the weekend here, so faster than practice and qualifying. Um, Hernandez, the pole position time was a 1 minute 28.099. Oh no, and another spin. Okay, well now this is going to open up the race completely. So just as I was gassing George up for the fantastic lap time there, 1 minute 28.056, fastest lap of the weekend, um, George goes around. Really unfortunate there, but um, they've all had a bit of a bubble now here at the front of the field. So I think that is definitely going to be the flavour of the race. We mentioned it back in qualifying that this race definitely, and the track, because of the elevation changes, quite difficult to control these cars, and it's proving to be um, fact here in the race. So we might actually, maybe we might, just thinking what camera angle we should do to go back and have a look at that. And sorry, George, but we are going to go back and have a look because I think it's a very, very good example of this corner where the first right-hander, um, you go down into the bowl, and then coming out of the right-hander, the elevation rises. And because of that, it actually unsettles the car quite a lot. Um, and you do have to um, sort of ride the car through the corner, almost like a wave. Um, and unfortunately, there for George, it's fun, but very, very easy to do on that corner. Actually, we were here um, this week in the MX5s in the production, uh, what is it, SimLab production car championship, which I've been trying to race in over this season. And the MX5s here, I would say, are more loose than the Formula 1600s. Yeah, the MX5 has been a bit of a handful here, and I've definitely found myself facing the wrong way a number of times. Um, so at the moment, George has been able to close down that gap by 4 tenths so far. So from my read after the spin, George was about 3.4, 3.6 seconds off the lead. And they are closing in on the race leader, so it's not over here. We'll have 11 laps to go as the leader crosses the line. And that camera angle there is a really good illustration of the gap. Um, on the same bit of tarmac there on the front straight. And George already on this lap, zero point 0.2 of a second, 2.8 seconds. So um, definitely making a move. And I think that last lap, I'm just going back through the laps. Yeah, that last lap, 1 minute 28.5.056 is a dead match for the lap time George set a few laps ago. So he's done two identical laps to set the fastest lap of the weekend here at Rudskogen Motorsenter. So George definitely putting the pace on and 4 tenths of a second faster than our race leader at the moment, who we're watching here on screen. So the race is definitely not over. 2.9 seconds between our two leaders, and just sitting here and watching to see whether Hernandez can respond with an in-kind lap time. But it looks like we're going to be running qualifying laps here until the end of the race to find a race winner. And just a reminder for viewers, going back to the conversation in the Twitch chat here, because of the rolling start, which is not has not been the tradition here in the Rainbow Racing League, but because of the rolling start today, potentially there might be some fuel issues towards the end of the race. So one or both of the leaders here might have to come in to have a bit of a fuel top up before the end of the race, which wasn't expected on the strategy card here today, um, but we'll see. So now we've got 2.4 seconds between the two leaders, and Hernandez, there's no previous lap time registering here, which tells me that they had a force cut, but a 1 minute 28.1 for our second place person here, George, who's slowly closing the gap to 2.1, 2 seconds now going into the hairpin. So one of the big questions here for George, and it has been a sort of a running theme as the season has gone on, um, is very, very easy to catch cars, but it's very hard to actually make a clean pass. Earlier in this race at the hairpin, phenomenal move by George there to have a late braking move into the hairpin to get the lead initially. But as I mentioned, there have been a couple of really, really good battles earlier in the season at Lime Rock Park and at Tsukuba last week, where it's proved quite difficult for George, even though they've had the pace to sort of um, make an easy and clean pass on people. And so, even though this gap is decreasing quite quickly, it'll be interesting to see once George is up to the back of Hernandez, whether or not they can actually make the move um, cleanly. Um, and so far in the season, they've sort of been meticulous and patient and been able to make clean moves eventually um, on people. And so George has proven time and time again that he has the racecraft to match the pace. But either way, it'll be very interesting and hopefully exciting to watch between the two race leaders. And now we've got 1.6 seconds between the two leaders. Again, um, George last lap, um, dipping into the 1 minute 27s, 1 minute 27.825. So we were talking in qualifying whether or not somebody could get into the 1 minute 27s, and George here um, with the with the eyes on, focused on getting back up to the race lead after that early spin. Um, Putting on a bit of a show here and a extremely impressive time um, to see. Over 2 tenths of a second faster than what we were seeing in qualifying. So really impressive lap times here from George, and only 1.5 seconds ahead of our race leader here, um, Hernandez in the number 18. So I think by the time we get to turn one here, um, we'll have Um, what will we have? 17 laps to go. 17? 7 laps to go. There is my uh, there is my 6 a.m. in the morning Australian maths there at play. 7 laps to go. I'm only halfway through my coffee, everyone, so you'll have to bear with me. Um, on this cold Monday morning, down here in Australia. But 7 laps to go here as we cross the finish line. 1.3 seconds between our two race leaders. And as we look into the lap times, 1 minute 28.198 for our race leader, and again a 1 minute 27.8 for George in second place. So um, 3 tenths of nearly 3 tenths of a second between the two race leaders on lap time. And yes, it's going to be now probably towards the end of this lap where um, Hernandez here and the race leader is going to have to think about where they place the car and how they defend the position. And so coming around these corners and George is here, zero point 0.7 of a second. Down here is where George previously made the move for the race lead, um, but not close enough um, as we head into the hairpin on lap 14. But definitely now here poised for a battle between our two race leaders. And we might just wait until we get through the last corner. But we might just quickly pick up Haley here in P3. We haven't heard much from Haley. Had a bit of a quiet race today. Just calmly here in P3. Setting 1 minute 29s consistently, like we mentioned earlier in the broadcast. And unfortunately, the race pace at the moment set by George is electric. And the race leaders have got away, but a very comfortable P3 here from Haley. Um, and it looks like Jess has parked it here today, or is sitting in the pits 5 laps down. And so we've just got our top three um, here on the racetrack. So Hernandez here has actually pulled out the race lead a little bit. Um, so it was point 0.45. Oh, and a little bit of a half spin there by George. um, fantastic car control again to grab that. But now the pressure um, is on George. He's made the pace. He put the pace down. He's closed the gap. But as we mentioned a few laps ago, while we were waiting for this battle to light up again, it's one thing to catch people. It's another thing to make a pass. Um, so George, they're really showing they want the fifth race win of the season. Um, our what did we say in the previous broadcast? Rainbow Racing's Max Verstappen. Um, well, today, um, finally beat in qualifying. So, um, not something we can say for the Formula One at the moment. Um, and actually, I'm pretty sure the Miami Grand Prix would have gone live by now. Um, so I'll definitely be tuning in for the end of that race after we finish up here today to see whether or not um, there might be some form of challenge for our runaway Formula One Championship leader, Max Verstappen. I doubt it, but thankfully here in the Rainbow Racing League, we have a battle here um, for the race win and a real challenge here to George, which I'm really excited to see um, Lomo Hernandez come back in future rounds of the championship and really put it to George in other tracks. But point four here, George has closed it down. And now we've got a race. We've got 4 laps to go once we come to the line here. Still the question mark about fuel and whether or not both the cars can make it to the end. Um, but until then, until we have to face the question of fuel, um, let's see whether George can get by our race leader. So 0.4 of a second over the line. Um, George setting another 1 minute 27, 1 minute 27.8 again, uh, and a 1 minute 28.2 from our race leader. So on my count, that is all very, very close there on the exit. Different angles coming out of that corner. The camber of the corner um, can really prove a bit difficult to manage in these cars, but good close racing between our race leaders. You love to see it. Probably could put a piece of paper between the two cars. And George looking there for a move. Not a traditional place to make a move, but didn't actually put the car up. Oh, there's a bit of a bump there. All right, so George has done, I think, the sportsman or the sports person thing to do, and just realised that probably a bit of oh, another bit of contact there. So George being a bit more aggressive than we're used to um, here, but all is fair. You know, nothing untoward at the moment. Um, just good, hard, close racing. And on this track, like we've mentioned previously in the broadcast, extremely hard to get a good pass done here because of the angle and the camber of the track and the corners. And so um, I wonder whether or not it looks like on the broadcast George has a bit of nose damage here, so potentially it might slow the car down. Um, but that was good fun racing there between the two of them. I wonder, I think it is popping up. Um, so let's just, so here we go. We'll go to the hairpin. We haven't been able to catch the earlier little collision, but just just missing their braking mark there a little bit. But I think what actually occurred there is what we've seen throughout the race. George actually has a later braking point than our race leader going into that hairpin, and so I don't think that was anything malicious or on purpose. I just think they both have different ways of approaching that corner. Our race leader here, I think, has a lot more pace coming out of this hairpin. And so you see it there again. Very, very different angles going into the corner. George has more speed going in and sort of mid-corner, and Hernandez there has more pace coming out of the corner. And so I don't think that was anything malicious. It's just different approaches to the corner. Um, you're running close, and unfortunately a bit of contact. But thankfully here for George, it looks like the nose damage that we can see on the broadcast is not affecting their pace at all. And we'll see them come across the line, zero point 0.6 of a second between them, and a 1 minute 29.3 for our race leader, 1 minute 28.4 for P2. So zero point 0.9 of a second difference in lap time. Um, and George again now that has a much shallower line coming through P2, um, which really proves to give them a bit more speed coming on to, can you call that a straight? I'm going to call it a straight, even though it's not. Um, and this is where George, um, oh, that was fantastic to watch how loose they're getting there. Really, that was a fantastic move by George there. Set that up from the entry into the S's. Really sort of um, put Hernandez out wide, and then because they were out wide through the S's, it meant that they probably came in at the wrong angle for that left-hander, and George was able to sort of do a bit of an under and over and get on the inside there for the race lead. So now with coming to a final lap of the race, there were questions about fuel here at the start of the race. And now the question is, um, the stress for me as a commentator is whether or not both of our race leaders can get to the end of the race. But here we are, final lap of the race. Hernandez going for a move down to turn one. Oh, what a move. Oh, and a bit of contact there. I would say fair play. Um, bit of a that corner does tighten up there right in the middle, but George down the inside again. This has been a phenomenal race, a race long battle between these two. 20 laps here under our belt. And oh no! Hernandez around, but again, like earlier in the race, really fantastic car control there, not to have a full spin. Like I said, probably utilizing the clutch and the brake, but unfortunately, that has meant our race leader here, George, has got out to a 2-point-second lead um, here on the final lap, and it looks like George is going to continue his perfect streak here in the Rainbow Racing League. Only stole the race win, or the race lead, I should say, on the 19th of 20 laps here today. But that was clean. And looks like George is slowing down here, and I wonder whether or not
I'm
this is
out
a
of fuel.
fuel issue. So I'll Oh, this is high drama here. It reminds me of the Toyota LMP car at Le Mans a couple of years ago, going within a lap of winning the 24 hours Le Mans. Um, oh, really, really unfortunate here for George. Um, it looks like they've run out of fuel as we come across the line. And Hernandez, our first new race winner of the season, round five here at the Rudskogen Motorsenter. Um, Guillermo Hernandez, our first race winner other than George of the season. What a fantastic drive. And George, he just gets across the line. And it looks like we've got a bit of an incident here with Haley. Bit of nose drama. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe we might just go back just to see in the replay before we go and grab our race leader. All right, Jess. Well, yeah, you guys have a vote. Oh, okay, Haley. All right, good. I thought there might have been maybe you were unsighted by George here, going slow. But that's fine. All good. We won't catch the accident. We'll come back to our race winner. Congratulations, number 18 Hernandez here, our first new race winner of the season. Under review at the moment, as Jess has said. Um, but we'll leave that for the officials to have a look at how we deal with the unpredicted rolling start. But look, I think that was a fantastic and measured drive by Hernandez here. Either way, race win or P2, um, a really, really good drive by them and well deserved result here today. And really, um, it does fill me with a lot of excitement as we go to future rounds of the championship to see um, what we have in store here. Um, Haley in previous races as well has been close on pace to the race leaders, and so I think we will have a good battle here between the three of those drivers for future races. Yeah, it was a good race. It was a good race, mate. I definitely think you'll enjoy seeing the race between the two of those the two race leaders. It was fantastic to see, and so um, we'll see whether or not we have a we potentially might not have an update for the championship points here on stream, and it might be yeah. I'll just wait to see whether or not there is a vote going on. Just the officials looking at the final results. I think potentially the final results will stand, but I'll wait here for some messaging around whether or not we'll have an updated championship point score for us all um, before we go um, into the rest of our week. Um, yeah, look, as a commentator, like I said, I don't get involved in determinations about race results. All I can say is that was an extremely good battle, George, between you and Guillermo. Um, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I don't know whether I could say it's my favorite battle of the season because there have been so many good battles. But definitely, again, a real highlight and an example of how exciting the racing can be here in the Rainbow Racing League. Well, you were impressive. The only person, George, to set a 1 minute 27 in um, practice qualifying in the race, and you set about four or five 1 minute 27.8s on my count. Um, so that pace there at the end to close the gap was phenomenal. And I think potentially, if Hernandez wasn't so consistent and had such great pace, you potentially could have got to the end there on fuel if you weren't having to run 1 minute 27. So, um, yeah, potentially the pace was also contributed to you not being able to make the end there. Um, but either way, fantastic race in between you two. So we're just waiting here to see whether or not um, there'll be a final decision, whether or not we'll get championship points. All right, so we have got championship points here. Let me um, just do my little magic and get the championship points up for you all. So give me a few seconds to get this done. Got And here we go. So um, the championship, um, George, the first P2 of the season for George with Hernandez coming through for the race win. George still with an extremely big win here, extremely big lead here in the championship, 147 points, plays 84 to Haley, who, as I said, has been an extremely consistent podium finisher. Um, a few third places, a second place as well um, in the first 5 rounds of the season, um, and just consistently banking points here. But one thing to watch out for the rest of the season will be for Hernandez and whether or not they can close that point gap and put in a battle here for P2 in the championship. And there's Jessica in P4, um, Amy in P5 as well, but as we mentioned, won't be joining us for the rest of the season. And Stephen, who we haven't seen since the first round of the championship, Stephen finished P3 and put an extremely good battle for the race win in the first round at Lime Rock Park. Um, Maximilian, who was very good in the last round. Matthew Baker, um, Garnett, and Selena there in P10 rounding out our championship points currently at the end of round five. Um, yeah, I think so, George. I think without that pace, potentially you could have made it to the end of the race. But you know, um, that's fair play to you both. Um, so what we will do now that we've got championship points up, um, we'll probably wrap it up for the day. Fantastic race here. I'm just looking at the calendar, and the next race is at Virginia International Raceway. Um, so um, just trying to see whether I can get the championship calendar up. I know there was a conversation about whether or not the championship might have a pause for the Nürburgring 24-hour that's coming up. Potentially some people might be competing in that. But what I'll do is I'll just get the championship calendar up here just to give people a bit of an idea of what um, we've got coming up. So here's the Rainbow Racing League championship calendar. Um, so far, we've had rounds at Lime Rock Park, Alton Park, the Charlotte Roval, Tsukuba, and Rudskogen Motorsenter. Um, and the next round will be at Virginia International Raceway. So yeah, there's a week break between Virginia and Okayama. So um, those dates will have to be revised a little slightly, but the next round will be at the 12th of the 5th at Virginia International Raceway. That's obviously the date in the part of the world most of you are at, but here in Australia, we're a day ahead just by the morning. And so for anybody in Australia watching, it'll be on the morning of the 13th or the 5th at Virginia International Raceway, and then we'll have a gap between that and Okayama. So probably push that 19th or the 5th back a week, and then we'll round out the season at Laguna Seca, which Laguna is one of my favorite tracks um, in any um, sort of form of sim racing. And I'm really excited to see what people can produce at Laguna Seca at the end of the season. Um, but with that, and with the calendar there on screen and the championship points being put out, that's me. I'm going to wrap up the stream. It's nearly 6:30 here in Australia, so I'm going to go probably have another coffee, have some breakfast, and let the phenomenal race sink in there. Um, Thank you to all the racers. Thank you to Jess for organising, and congratulations to Hernandez on what is a well-deserved and fantastic win. Pole position and race win for Hernandez. Our first new pole position and race winner of the season. First person to take it to Georgia and win. What a phenomenal race there in the final laps between the two, with the lead changing a number of times. And on that last lap, a spin, which I thought cost Hernandez the win, but then George is running out of fuel as we came around the last corner. So really, really exciting racing there. And I look forward to next week when we go to Virginia International Raceway. But thank you everybody for joining. Um, I'm Frank Gaffer, lovely unicorn, as you can see there at the top of the stream, and it's been a pleasure commentating. Thanks, George, and thank you for putting on a show. I really, really appreciate you guys putting on some good racing for me to start my week. It's always energizing thing to watch before I get into my work day. Anyway, all right, everyone. I look forward to seeing everybody next week, and look after yourselves.